Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to a different kind of video today, but it is music based. I am going to do a very mild review of the recent James Mangold film, A Complete Unknown, which stars Timothy Chalamet as a young Bob Dylan between the time that he arrives in New York and then up until he goes electric in 1965. So small story in terms of the amount of the career that it covers for Bob Dylan. Um, Again, for those of you that don't know anything about Bob Dylan, essentially Bob Dylan came into New York City as a folk singer. He was, a disciple of Woody Guthrie, especially. He loved Woody Guthrie, studied him, was a encyclopedic kind of mastermind of folk music, and took all that he knew and that he had studied when he was living in Hibbing, Minnesota, made his way to New York, where the folk scene was really starting to kick off. And kind of that's where he got his chops, was playing in the folk clubs, Cafe Wa, Greenwich Village, all those places. So the Gaslight. Um, so it kind of gets the film kind of gets started there. And I will say, I'll go ahead and say that this film, I mean, this review does have spoilers. So um, if you want to watch this, after you see the film, you can add it to your watch later playlist and watch it when you get back from the movies. But I got to see this movie a couple days ago with a buddy of mine in town, and went to my local theater, like the Independent Theater, which is where I like to see all of like the artsy movies, my music based movies. It's just a really old theater, and so my buddy and I went on a Friday night. What would that be? The 27th. Yeah, the 27th. Um, and I guess to start with, really enjoyed it. Um, Again, James Mangold directed the Walk the Line movie with Reese Witherspoon and Joaquin Phoenix about Johnny Cash, and kind of a similar thing. Like it just covers a small period of Cash's life, and I think a lot of people were a little hesitant going into this movie, The Complete Unknown, because we knew, especially the Dylan fans knew going in, that timelines were going to be blurred in the storyline. There were some facts that weren't necessarily the truth. I know even Bob Dylan himself, who met with Mangold a couple years ago when they were going over pre-production stuff, there's supposedly a scene in the movie that Dylan says completely fake, but only he and Mangold know what it is. Um, but anyway, beautifully shot. The acting is great across the board. The supporting cast, obviously, again, you have Timothy Chalamet um, doing a really, really, really good job portraying Bob, having his mannerisms down, little, nuances, like he grows his fingernails out long, which is kind of what Bob Dylan had in the 60s. So like he kind of got like these like nasty looking fingernails. He's got the sideburns down. Um, for when Dylan was kind of going, electric, he was wearing, the dark glasses, and just his mannerisms, how he was holding a cigarette, and how he kind of like rubs his face. Like it was, he had the mannerisms down perfectly, I thought. But you also have Edward Norton doing a fantastic job as Pete Seeger, and kind of acts as the moral compass to Bob, and being the guy that you know the past is your folk music, Bob. Like you're trying to bring folk music to the mainstream, and Dylan is obviously constantly pushing to go forward. He goes electric. His lyrics become more, um, less political and more kind of stream of consciousness, very artsy, a lot of poetic references in his lyrics, literary characters, things like that. And he wasn't following the path of Pete Seeger, of Woody Guthrie, even his contemporaries, Peter, Paul, and Mary, who never really strayed from their roots. And again, another major character, not just in this movie, but in Bob Dylan's life, is Joan Baez, who is portrayed here. And I have the cast list up here. She's portrayed by Monica Barbaro, who I didn't know before, but she does a really good job as Joan, kind of curt, very direct with Bob. And I should also say all the actors are doing their own playing and singing, from what I understand. And so Timothy Chalamet's playing harmonica, the guitar. Monica's playing guitar. He's playing the banjo, like Pete Seeger. So really, really cool that they're playing everything live. And that's another thing. I think for the most part, everything is sung live, in the moment, which makes it more authentic, makes it, less predictable every time. It doesn't sound clean from a studio. So I respect that a lot too. One of the major factual differences between this movie and real life is the fact that Bob's love interest, besides Joan Baez, is a character named Sylvie, who she is played by Elle Fanning, but she is a fictional, characterization of Susie Rotolo, who is Bob Dylan's muse and girlfriend, partner during the early '60s Greenwich Village days. She's the one that you see on that famous cover of Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, but kind of holding her close in the cold, and her photos are on that as well. And from what I understand, that was Bob's choice. He didn't want her name to be used. So I don't know if that was for, he didn't want her to be subject to any kind of, or her estate to be subject to any kind of, fan mail or anything like that. Maybe it might have been like a breach of privacy. I don't know. But Elle Fanning does a really good job in that role. And again, you do feel sorry for her, because Bob was known for not being the greatest with his girlfriends. He was, constantly seeking out his muse. So he jumps from Sylvie to Joan Baez, and then, not in this movie, but you find out later that, he ends up essentially getting married under Joan Baez's nose. So, he's not the best example of a boyfriend, as it were. But you also have, again, some supporting roles. Boyd Holbrook as Johnny Cash. He does a really good Johnny Cash. Kind of another advisor to Bob in the movie. His part isn't huge. Scoot McNairy as Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie is in it. He's nonverbal because of his condition in the hospital. Because when the real Bob Dylan, met Woody Guthrie, Woody Guthrie was in pretty rough shape and dying. And that's one of the creative liberties that they take, is the length of time that they keep this Woody Guthrie character alive. But it does work with the ending, and you kind of have to think of it as almost like dreamlike, where I'll get to that in a second. But you also have, other characters. Dan Fogler plays Al Grossman, he's a really good part. Norbert Leo Boots plays Alan Lomax. He's a pretty hard-nosed character, especially toward the end when Bob goes electric at Newport. Pete Seeger's wife is played by Ariko Hatsune as Toshi Seeger. You also have the guy from Ozark who plays Wyatt, if you know the show Ozark, Charlie Tahan. He plays Al Cooper briefly, the piano player slash organ player on Like a Rolling Stone. And so you have other characters that show up who people are in there playing Mike Bloomfield, Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul and Mary, John Hammond, who are less important characters, but they're still portrayed in the film. And again, overall, I thought it was a really good movie. It's not. Don't go in there thinking that's the Bob Dylan story, because it's not. I'm actually going to see it again tomorrow with my fiance. She hasn't seen it, and I want to see it again. So I will get to see it again tomorrow. But I wanted to get this out there. Again, it's great. The acting is fantastic. Chalamet does a great job. And I will say, the ending, um, the ending. I guess I'll go. I won't say what the ending is, even though there are spoilers. But the ending does have it's a poignancy to it, in the sense that it kind of shows where Bob was heading, with his muse, and the way that they portray that is pretty neat. So that's my thought anyway. But all the actors did a great job. Again, the filming is great. The colors in the film are great. The music's great. You know, will it make new Bob Dylan fans? I hope so. I guess my one complaint, and my one thing that I'll kind of advise people toward is, um, be Bob is always going to be a man of mystery. A man of mystery. We don't need to know Bob's true story. That's part of the mystique. But what I guess the one thing that I'm afraid of is that kids are going to be, snatching up this soundtrack. The people that are in love with Timothy Chalamet, and essentially will be saying, like, oh, Timothy Chalamet does these songs a million times better than Bob. He sings so much better than Bob. Um, but what I want to remind you is, what Bob Dylan did by going electric is nothing short of the most gutsy thing that anybody could have done at the time. Um, you know, I mean, you think today, I mean, there's so much oversaturation with music and things. I mean, like, if an artist decided to jump to a genre, I mean, they have, somebody like a Post Malone has made a country album. If Taylor Swift decided to make a rap album, it would be, it would be news, but it wouldn't shake the landscape. My buddy Tommy has said, and really made me think, what other artists can you think of that you go back to one moment of one show, and that's something that's still talked about? People still talk about, Dylan going electric and what that did to music. Whether you like Bob or not, it redefined what was going to happen in the 60s. So keep that in mind. If you decide, that you're now a Bob Dylan fan, great. But just keep in mind that Bob Dylan did that, not Timothy Chalamet. So I feel like I just had to say that. So anyway, let me know if you've seen the film. Let me know what you thought about it. Yeah, I'm excited to see it again. Equally as excited. So that's all I have to say. In the meantime, y'all be good, take care, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye now.